Hello, welcome to New Europe Studios. I am Dan Alexe. With us today, a very special guest, Mr. Juan José Gómez Camacho, who is Ambassador of Mexico to the European Union, to Belgium, and to Luxembourg. Welcome, Ambassador. Welcome, Mr. Camacho.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us in spite of your very busy schedule, because you must be busy with preparing next week's summit and the coming of your president for the summit, the EU summit with the Latin American countries.
Yes.
And you also have a bilateral summit with the European Union.
European Union summit.
What are you expecting from this summit?
Well, we expect, first of all...
more than usual? More than from a usual summit?
Yes.
The last one was 2 years ago.
It was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
And in fact, we only, both the European Union and Mexico, decided to hold this summit only now because we were working very hard in building content, in preparing the conditions to, in fact, relaunch Mexico-EU relationship overall. And
busy also with a lot of structural reforms on a new model, something that you never had before.
Well, as you know, Mexico is one of the 10 strategic partners of the European Union.
From the Latin American area and the Caribbean?
No.
From all over?
No. All over the world, the European Union has designated 10 countries as strategic partners. These countries are those you can imagine. The US, Canada, Russian Federation,
Japan.
China, Japan, India, and Mexico. And this nature of being strategic partners means that the relationship is a highly structured, highly institutionalized relationship.
It implies a higher responsibility as well.
Well, yes, and also is one that has many avenues, many tracks of different issues, whether they are economic, political, social, cooperation, you name it. So this relationship has been ongoing in that way. However, since 2000, when the global agreement, the framework for this relationship entered into force, many things have happened. The European Union, of course, has changed a lot since 2000, particularly in terms
of Mexico as well.
Well, the EU in terms of membership, but the EU in many ways has changed. Mexico has changed far more. We are a bigger country. We have a far bigger economy. Today, Mexico is one of the largest economies in the world. And as you know, we became precisely over the last 15, 20 years a true manufacturing powerhouse. Mexico is one of the largest manufacturer producers in the world. We are one of the largest exporters in the world. We are one of the largest importers in the world.
And Europe is your second partner after the United States?
Well, the European Union used to be our second partner after the United States. Now it's China. The EU has come down to the third place. So precisely taking all these circumstances into account, including the fact that Mexico entered the most comprehensive structural reform process over the last year and a half, both EU and Mexico decided that it was time to overhaul the relationship and to create a structure and content that reflects better who we are now, that reflects better the size of Mexico today, which is a more globally systemic nation. Mexico is, as you would consider, an emerging country, so we need a relationship and a structure that reflects that, and also very much a relationship that can, let's say, where we both can profit more of the economic potential of this relationship, including trade.
A little bit of background would be useful for the viewers to understand. Until the year 2000, Mexico had been for 7 decades a one-party political system.
Yes.
And there was an upheaval in the year 2000. People were fed up with a party that has been sitting there during World War II, the Cold War, and so on. There was corruption. There was rigidity in the political system. So it was the party was rejected, the institutional revolutionary party.
I wouldn't say an upheaval. What happened in Mexico is that particularly over
pluralism. You had pluralism
no, I mean,
afterwards.
let's say after since early 1990s, the country began, the political system began modernizing to change and strengthening Mexico's democracy.
Yes.
Pluralism increased, and that led to, in 2000, an election where, for the first time, in fact, after more than 70 years, an opposition party won the election.
Yes, and then in 2012, to everybody's surprise, the Revolutionary Party made a comeback through
after 2 terms of the PAN, National Action Party, 12 years in government, and then in 2012, the electorate chose the PRI and President Enrique Peña Nieto,
who introduced for the first time these structural reforms.
And President Peña Nieto manages to put together a comprehensive political package signed by all political forces in Congress, left, center, and center-right, all the opposition represented in Congress. You have to keep in mind that in Mexico, no party has control of Congress with majorities.
Yes.
The PRI has a relative majority, but lacks
not enough to
change the constitution.
Because you had to change the constitution 5 times, if I remember well, in order to introduce the reforms.
No, we have education. What we did was to put together a package of structural reforms, we began with labor to make labor market more flexible, then education reform, which
security
is
structures,
education,
energy,
critical, then telecommunication that opens up the telecom market, opens it up for foreign direct investment, then fiscal, then financial, economic competition,
you ended the state monopoly in
and we
energy,
ended the state monopoly in energy, which is the
gas.
jewel of the crown, if you like.
Yes.
In terms of all these reforms, the constitution was changed there were more than 50 changes to the federal constitution, which is an enormous package of changes.
But 5 or 6 major changes.
No, 7 major changes. All these I mentioned: labor, education, telecommunications, energy, particularly those, and economic competition are major constitutional changes.
Why did you have to change the constitution for something in education?
First of all, to ensure that is a human right. Second, to ensure that teachers go through serious evaluation processes. And second, to create a new institution at the constitutional level with constitutional autonomy to monitor teachers' performance, assessing their performance, assessing their capacity, and as to assess whether they are delivering. At the end of the day, well, Mexico is a very young country. It's a country of 120 million people with an average age of 26 years old. Half of the population is below 18. So for us, the human capital we need to tap in is enormous. And the way to ensure that is precisely education. The biggest challenge of Mexico and the biggest objective of Mexico is to create a country with high human capital, highly innovative human capital, a very competitive sectors or economy, and in order to do that, the fundamentals are this enormous capital of human beings or Mexicans that we have. So we needed this constitutional reform. Then you have 2 reforms that are, economically speaking, landmark reforms. One is telecommunication, it was a sector where foreign direct investment was banned.
Because it was a state sector.
No, it was private, but no foreign direct investment allowed. So the sector was concentrated, highly concentrated. Today the sector was completely opened. It is completely opened. Foreign direct investment is coming as a result of the reform. For example, AT&T entered the Mexican market big time, making 3 large acquisitions, and an institution to ensure competition in the telecom market was also established, constitutionally independent, to ensure that there are no concentration of the market as it was in the past. So we are well, extremely eager to see that changing. Energy is even bigger, because energy, as you quite rightly pointed out, energy was a state monopoly. It was a state monopoly, yes. Oil, gas, and electricity. The 3 areas are today opened up.
2 or 3 years ago it opened.
A year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago.
And the interesting thing is that all these reforms I am mentioning now, if you see them, they work in tandem. They reinforce one with the other. They make sense together, precisely to achieve this huge goal of a more competitive, more innovative country, to ensure that Mexico can grow faster, in a more sustainable way, and in a higher, with a higher percentage.
And as a result, you hope to launch this year the negotiations for a free trade agreement with the EU, with the European Union.
Yes, well,
you had an agreement in 2000.
We have already a free trade agreement since 2000.
So what would be the difference? That was, at the more time, focused on tariffs?
No, at the time, this treaty was already a modern treaty, but it was one of the early ones. So today is, let's say, an old vehicle. It's a treaty that only deals with...
It doesn't cover services.
It basically covers trading goods.
Yeah.
And
tariffs and prices. And
so, of course...
Quotas, no quotas.
For Mexico, the agricultural sector is very important. And we are, our negotiators, in the case of Mexico, is the Ministry of Economy. In the case of the European Union, is the DG Trade and Commissioner Malmström. They are jointly working in establishing the levels of ambition for the negotiation. Commissioner Malmström said a couple of weeks ago, in presence of our Minister of Economy, to the press, that these conversations were very advanced, and that she intended to seek a mandate to launch formal negotiations. So we are monitoring, working very hard to finalize this process bilaterally, and we expect that during the summit, Mexico-EU summit, our presidents, President Peña Nieto, President Tusk, and President Juncker, are in a position to make strong political and economic announcements about
which means issue. The bilateral summit next week will be more important than the common summit with the countries of the Latin America. Because you went further than some countries like Brazil, for instance.
Yes.
Which is more protectionist, or Venezuela, or...
well, Mexico is probably by far the most liberalized country, and is one of the most liberalized countries in the world.
Chile and Peru?
Probably so. Mexico, let's say, let me put it this way. Mexico is one of the top in the world. We have free trade agreements with over 50 countries. In fact, one of the reasons why Mexico is receiving so much foreign direct investment today, which is averaging 32, 33 billion a year and increasing and growing, is precisely because of Mexico's access to a large portion of global GDP in terms of trade. And the fact that, as a result of NAFTA 20 years ago and this open policy that Mexico has pursued, the level of economic integration in the North American region, Canada, US, and Mexico, has become really, really important. So if you think in terms of the European Union, when seeing Mexico, there are two elements. One is Latin America, the one you say, which is, well, it's a very large economy, it's a leading economy in the region.
You have your own regional structure, and that's Mercosur.
Well, no, Mercosur is the South American countries.
Yes.
Exactly. Then you have different arrangements. You have the ALBA countries, then you have the Alianza del Pacífico, where Mexico well,
and the negotiations with Mercosur, EU's negotiations with Mercosur, were held back by some reluctance.
They seem not to be moving. Whereas in the case of Mexico, you see Mexico, a country with, let me put it this way, 3 or 4 different phases. One phase is Mexico itself, which is a very large, growing, emerging economy. You have the Latin American Mexico, which is the one we have been talking about, but we also have the North American Mexico. And the North American Mexico is in many ways the one that plays an increasingly prominent role vis-a-vis the European Union. Because North America, Canada, US, and Mexico is an integrated open market of almost 500 million people, which is almost the same size of the European Union.
Yeah. The EU has signed already with Canada, is negotiating with the United States, and now...
They had negotiated with us, and now we are going to modernize, precisely because of, at the end of the day, the transatlantic relationship makes sense with North America as a whole, not only with the US individually. So these instruments eventually, or this relationship eventually, will have to connect one with the other.
You mentioned foreign reluctance to invest in Mexico, earlier foreign
reluctance. No.
I just wanted to ask, do you think that, let's say, some reservations, or the war on drugs could have affected that? At times it looked like a civil war almost in some provinces.
No.
And what changed now in the last 2 years with the reforms?
First of all, let me tell you that it's very interesting because despite the challenges in security, which we had, of course, regardless of the way the press put it, neither tourism nor foreign direct investment ever stopped in Mexico. On the contrary, it kept growing over the past few years. And that is always very telling on or about the reality of the country. Second, yes, the challenge of Mexico has to do very much with geography, first of all. Mexico is in North America, and it has been historically a transit route for drugs moving northwards, coming from the south. And that, of course, has created organizations. Well, it has created transnational criminal organizations that operate in the whole region, not only in Mexico. And the roots for these organizations and the movement of drugs, of course, created perils and insecurity in certain parts of the country. Now, don't forget that Mexico is a very large country. It's a country of 2 million square kilometers. So you have to distinguish the areas from areas or region from regions. What has changed? At the peak of when we started,
one had the impression earlier that the government was focusing on capturing or killing some important figures and neglecting the infrastructure, the population.
No, more than that. In 2006-07, the administration launched a very strong law enforcement campaign against organized crime.
With the new gendarmerie?
And this created, of course, violence, mostly amongst themselves, the criminal organizations themselves, because of the ever-shrinking routes or the more success law enforcement authorities had, the more struggle amongst organized crime. Yes, it is true that by 2011, violence and insecurity in certain parts of the country reached a peak that we hadn't known in the past. Now, compared to where we were in 2011 and where we are now, all figures of insecurity are coming down. In 26-27, to give you an idea, Mexico had 7 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants, where the average in Latin America was 17. Then
so almost like Colombia.
No, the average was 17.
Yes. But
Mexico was 7.
Oh, 7.
7. The average 17, and other countries, which I prefer not to name, but you can see, were in the 30s, late or upper 20s, 30s. Mexico had 7. At the peak of of this campaign, yes, it is true that Mexico went up to middle 20s, but we closed 2014 in 16, so we are already below again average in Latin America. There are countries in the region that have 90, 70, 60, 50s. We are now in 16, and today I was reading an index on peace prepared by a European organization that making a comparison of a few countries, including the US, the UK, Israel, and others. Mexico is the one that it is achieving faster, higher levels of peace, or rather solving insecurity issues. So we have a challenge, we are addressing it, and you are quite rightly in saying that before there was a very big emphasis in tackling this organization, whereas today the same emphasis remains, but at the same time public safety has taken a more important role, and in that sense the administration has been very successful in lowering all these issues. And then again you see tourism and infrastructure and investment. Both areas, tourism and investment, are the two indicators that have been growing the most over the last 2 years.
Another topic that we haven't tackled yet is corruption.
Yes.
And President Enrique Peña Nieto promised at the beginning of his mandate that he will tackle the issue.
Yes.
What has been done there?
Precisely last week, the President signed into law the constitutional reforms adopted by Congress on transparency, creating a new national watchdog, if you like, with lots of legal tools at its disposal to tackle corruption and, above all, conflicts of interest. That's on the one hand.
Kind of body of prosecutors that supervises
yes, with autonomy and capacity to pursue these cases.
Like the EU asked the Eastern European countries to create and
install. There you go. Second, new laws and regulation that require from every public servant not only to disclose what we are disclosing already, but also to disclose potential conflicts of interest, for example, much more transparency and publicity on the way the budget is being spent, tenders are carried out. All this is being put in a really very high levels of transparency. The government, the President, has acknowledged that this is a challenge of the country, and he is totally committed, together with Congress, to address it fast and successfully.
The very day when the President was signing the law, he himself was hit by some allegations.
Well,
and
but
he has to explain himself
and he did.
He did.
And he did.
Because
and he did.
There were rumors that he would not come to the summit.
No.
He will come.
He will come. No. He will come whenever there have been questions and allegations on any of officials in government. They have been explained, they have been clarified, but still we needed to put in place stronger mechanisms that also make the public feel more comfortable and certain of the way the public administration is performing in terms of transparency, corruption, and conflict of interest. So after many months of debate in Congress, very strong new laws were put in place, constitutional reforms put in place, precisely to address this issue, as I said, efficiently, fast, and successfully.
So that you'll be able to start negotiating this year a new treaty, free trade agreement with the European Union.
We expect the Commission to seek a mandate as soon as possible.
From the 28 governments.
From the 28 governments. From what we know, all 28 are very much in favor of this negotiation, very keen to give Commissioner Malmström a mandate to negotiate, so we expect that process to go also very smoothly. And as soon as it is done, we hope soon, we will be ready to start negotiations. Hopefully, yes, this very 2015.
Especially now that Europe has been overcome by China on your markets.
Now, yes, well, that's an interesting point. Mexico is has a very large domestic market. Again, it's a country of 120 million people that is growing. So the EU for many years used to be our second trading partner. Today is the third, and it has not grown over the last few years. It has only grown inertially with the economy, but not substantially. So that is something, of course, we all are interested in. Well, we are interested in having a more competitive economy. We are interested in having more suppliers to the Mexican market, and that's what it is.
Especially that you don't need a visa anymore for Europe.
No, we have not needed one for many decades.
But you still need one for the United States.
Well, yes, but that's again, regardless of that, the level of integration in North America. Just to give you an idea, as our Minister of Foreign Affairs was mentioning recently here in Brussels, Mexico today is the fourth largest exporter of cars in the world and the sixth largest producer. Every car, and this is just an example of what is today very common across many industries that are integrated, whose value chains are integrated in North America. Any car that leaves a Mexican factory or a US factory has crossed the border at least 8 times before being ready to go to the market. So that explains a lot how much Mexico has changed, the size of the Mexican economy, the integration of the North American market, and why Mexico is so important for the European Union, as of course it is the European Union for us. And finally, you should always keep in mind that in these phases that Mexico has, we are also in the Pacific. Mexico is also part of the Trans-Pacific negotiations together with our North American partners, Canada and the US. And that negotiation is well ahead. We hope it will be finalized, concluded in the next few months. And that, of course, will, gives another layer of strategic elements or nature to North America vis-a-vis the European Union.
And hence the importance of China for you.
Totally.
Mr. Gómez Camacho, thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure.
I am Dan Alexe. I remind you that we have with us today Mr. Gómez Camacho, Ambassador of Mexico to the European Union, Brussels, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.